The interesting thing with the evolution of the PFAS discussion has been, okay, this is going to be a regulated contaminant. What are we going to do? To where does that end? From a business perspective, we're looking to ensure that we're prepared depending upon where the regulatory framework falls, whether that's from a water perspective or from a waste perspective. It will have a very different impact.
Hey everyone, it's Bob Crossan. I'm the editorial director for Wastewater Digest. I'm joined today by Bob Cappadona. He is president and CEO of environmental services for Veolia North America. Bob, thanks so much for speaking with me. It's been a bit since we last spoke, but it's great to see you again.
Great to be here, Bob. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. So we wanted to talk to you about kind of what you're forecasting a little bit and thoughts on what 2024 might bring. Are there certain areas of water and wastewater in this particular market that you do expect to see some great revenue opportunities or some growth opportunities for you in 2024?
Good question, Bob. And when thinking about the questions, I was thinking about, okay, where were we at this time last year? Because
Mhm.
at this time last year, I think people were crystal balling a little bit about where was our economy going, and how is that going to impact our business. We tend to lag a little bit with the economy, typically a 3 to 6 month lag behind the economy. And now, as we enter 2024, I think the perspective is a little bit, people are looking back saying, okay, we weren't right about 2023, and maybe have a little bit more optimistic view about 2024 than we did about 2023. 2023 was a busy year for our group. General business activity was good. Projects in looking at developmental projects, probably a little bit more robust than we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year. The discussion of onshoring, I think maybe at times a little bit overused, but at the same time, if you drive across the center part of our country and you look left and right, you see a lot of new construction underway, and kind of basic manufacturing type opportunities that have created opportunities for us in terms of waste and wastewater management. So I believe we've got an optimistic, but keep an eye on the horizon
Yeah.
type view of where we're headed in 2024. And I think like I said, 2023 set a good foundation for us for 2024, because maybe we started 2023 with a little bit more pessimistic view than
Mhm.
frankly the year turned out to be. In 2024, used the foundation we built in 2023 to be ready for 2024, and maybe with a little bit dose of optimism that we have for the coming year.
Yeah, that's what we saw at our State of the Industry survey that we conducted with our audience, was that there does seem to appear to be a good deal of optimism despite some of the uncertainties that still surround things like PFAS and Build America, Buy America, all these other things that are kind of complicating the web that is the marketplace. And they're still optimistic about the future of it because I think that that bipartisan infrastructure law funding and knowing that it's going to be there and then as soon as those headwinds clear, it will surge is really I think that's a really exciting prospect for a lot of folks in the marketplace. But on that point, the question I'm interested in is some of the headwinds that you foresee at this moment. Are there things that you're looking at and saying, hey, that might be a challenge for us this year, and this is how we're going to overcome it?
Good question. And the way we look at our business is oftentimes we look at the broader environmental business, but
Hmm.
also look at industry sectors. And we perform best in certain industry sectors versus others, but we want to take a look at all industry sectors, because again, it's kind of like I said earlier about our business being maybe a bit of a lagging indicator of the broader economy. also some industry sectors can be kind of indicators of what's to come in the next 3 to 6 months,
Hmm.
or maybe with the again onshoring. How does that impact certain sectors? So I think some of the things that we've seen towards the end of 2023, we saw some industry sectors being a little bit stronger than others, and that's something that we want to keep an eye on because it will impact the type of work that we may be doing in one sector or another. The semiconductor business and the technical level of work that we do within the semiconductor business, or maybe in the chemical business, where you're dealing with larger volume type commodities, but in a little bit different type of work rather
Hmm.
than the technical manufacturing environment of the semiconductor business. One of the things that we've seen that we're keeping an eye on is the manufacture of agricultural chemicals. And that seems like, okay, that's a very narrow
Hmm.
kind of scope, but agricultural chemicals are a big volume waste stream and industry for us to keep an eye on, maybe being influenced by what's going on in the world and the ability to export some of those materials, may also be a little bit of an indicator of inventories and the work that's been done in 2023 and what's the forecast for 2024. So that's what we're trying to really make sure that we keep track on and we're prepared for is looking at specific industry sectors and what we do to make sure that there's push and pull in order to manage that. Again, some of them may be high volume type things that can impact our business. Some things can be more technical type
Hmm.
operations where require more resources in terms of how we support them.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned kind of like the globe, and one of my interests is learning some of the higher level trends that are going on too. I know that like greenhouse gas emissions, decarbonization, and sustainability have always kind of been at the forefront, but they seem to be gaining some more traction now in the water wastewater space. Are there trends like that that you're seeing that you think are going to be driving some business? Is sustainability one of those trends? What other things are you hearing and seeing when it comes to those kind of like bigger global societal pressures that might be impacting business decisions?
100%. I almost view it as kind of like the suburban wave that you see that comes from certain cities where, um, it's at 10 miles, it's at 20 miles, it's at 30
Hmm.
miles. We've seen the same type of thing in terms of sustainability and ESG relative
Hmm.
to the types of industries and how they've responded to it. And the industries that are closer to the consumer tend to respond a
Hmm.
little bit sooner. Industries that are more infrastructure based, maybe a little bit later in responding to it. And then the same thing is the impact of the general economy on that,
Hmm.
and what's the speed at which a company or industry is investing in sustainability, and the speed at which they will do it.
Hmm.
Candidly, being a company that's our corporate headquarters in Paris, France, our U.S. headquarters here in Boston, definitely the influence of the work that's done in Europe,
Hmm.
and how ESG and sustainability has been incorporated into industry in Europe. And oftentimes a good lunchroom discussion here at Veolia is decision making and
Hmm.
how that's being made in Europe and how that is being made here in the US. I mean, one that we often joke about is when you get your boarding pass and you're on a plane and on the boarding pass it talks about what your carbon footprint is for that particular flight.
Hmm.
Here in the US, how much do we look at that? In
Yeah.
Europe, it impacts, am I going to go skiing in the Alps or am I going skiing in Colorado?
Hmm.
I'm going skiing in the Alps because my carbon footprint. Um, it is an influence on decision making. So we're seeing it. I think we keep an eye on how that wave has gone through Europe, because in some cases that may be an indicator of how it impacts certain industries here in the U.S. Candidly, and I certainly say this with a level of Veolia pride. I think that's one of our that's what we lead with is we have the
Mhm.
opportunity to lead with solutions for environmental challenges that enable us to live the way that we want to live. And the efforts that we see within Veolia to research opportunities for improvement, opportunities for advancement, you don't always necessarily see in an industry that tends to be a back end industry rather
Mhm.
than a front end industry very focused on innovation. Not always something you see on a back end. It's almost looked at as an industrial service or an infrastructure service. At Veolia, very focused on how we can make a difference on that in everything from carbon capture to technical innovations within our business. We spend a lot of time on that. And I think it's a good opportunity for our business. It's also exciting for our employees from the standpoint of being a look at what are we going to do next, rather than just
Mhm.
doing what we do today a little bit better. What's the next thing that we're going to have the opportunity to do?
Yeah, and that instills pride then in those employees as well. It's not just your pride any longer.
Absolutely, and I've been here for over 30 years, so I've consumed a lot of the Kool-Aid of Veolia. But you see it we've in our group we've hired 998 new employees within the last year. Um, those new employees come to see some of the opportunities that we have within our business, some of the new things that we're working on within our business. It's the definition of a mission-driven company. No doubt, we're not a nonprofit. We're focused on providing a good service to industry, but it also gives energy to our employees to be able to work on efforts like that where they truly feel like they're making a difference in the world.
Yeah. So I wanted to end on one last question here, which is more on like the regulatory frameworks. I know especially in the US, they got the PFAS MCL that's likely to have its final ruling here in the next couple of months here in the first quarter of 2024. But you have a couple lingering questions of like PFAS and biosolids and the CERCLA rule for PFAS.
Mm.
What what are you thinking when it comes to those regulatory things? Like I said, there's some question marks that still exist. There's some things that seem a little more certain than others, but how is that impacting your business divisions and how are you trying to prepare to serve your customers to the best capabilities that you can?
It's a great question, and the interesting thing with the evolution of the PFAS discussion has been, okay, this is going to be a regulated contaminant. What are we going to do?
Hmm.
To where does that end? In terms of going in every direction from impact on things that we do today, things that we look to do in the future, how does the regulatory framework play out?
Hmm.
Oftentimes, and it's becoming more and more rare where I get in front of an audience and say, how many of you are aware of PFAS?
Hmm.
A couple of years ago, you would ask that question, and most people weren't even aware of the discussion of PFAS. Become more and more of a discussion. And now, when you mention PFAS to people, the extension of what the potential impact is of PFAS, and starting with, well, where is it?
Hmm.
How is it used? What was the industrial use for? Um, and it can get very, very broad, maybe a little bit overwhelming for people to understand. From a business perspective, we're looking to ensure that we're prepared depending upon where the regulatory framework falls, whether that's from a water perspective or from a waste perspective. It will have a very different impact. At the same
Hmm.
time, we're trying to work with the regulatory community with some of the work that we're doing in-house on some of the treatment technologies that we look to deliver. And how does that work within the regulatory framework of what the agencies are trying to pursue?
Mhm.
if you think about it, here's a contaminant where the regulatory framework is starting with, from an analytical perspective, what can you achieve? So
Mhm.
when you start with the analytical perspective, then you can look at the potential treatment technologies, and then frankly the risk assessment of where you land. It's a lot more complicated than I think at first pass maybe people would believe. And again, I reflect back to years ago, we
Mhm.
sit down in a conference room and look at PFAS as a contaminant.
Mhm.
Not that simple. Much more than that. And look at it from, as you said, from everything from wastewater to biomass to constituents and chemicals to consumer products.
Mhm.
It is it is something that we see as a potential impact of our business and in all different avenues and things that we want to make sure that we're providing solutions for, and also in how we manage our day-to-day business.
Yeah. Yeah, it is quite the problem with so many complexities. And like I said, there's still a lot of question marks. So it can be a little scary to talk about and think about, you know? So
That's why I said when I have the opportunity, oftentimes there's a lot of curiosity in what we
Mhm.
do because it's a little bit of behind the curtain or the
Yeah.
behind the black wall of explain exactly how our business works. So I love that asking the question of how many have heard the word dioxin, how many have heard the word PFAS, and try to see how the audience responds to that.
Mhm.
PFAS is one that has gained a lot of interest very quickly, um, and it is a very complex issue that, frankly, I think we're going to be dealing with for many years.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Well, Bob, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, talk to me about the business that you guys are looking forward to, some of the regulatory things you're considering, some of the bigger trends, and the pride that you have in managing probably one of the bigger trends right now, which is sustainability. So it's great to hear from you and to spend time with you. So thanks once again.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for the time.
And for everyone who's watching this, you can check out our video description below for some more information about Veolia North America. And you can also see our State of the Industry report, in which we have a lot of data on all these trends that we spoke about today.